Welcome back into Dawson Now. This episode is brought to you by the Man Church. Be a man, follow Jesus. So if you want some more information, go to themanchurch.com. As you know, the website that developed and the ministry that's really just kind of has the energy behind it of Rick Burgess of the Rick and Bubba Show. Our guest for this episode is a man that has turned transformational generosity into one of those life-saving opportunities for ministries across the globe. In fact, I'm someone that can actually say I was impacted by his ministry and his platform. He is the author of two books. The first one was The Fulfillment Principle. His new one's coming out in this August called The Courage Factor. He is the voice for transformational generosity. And ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to welcome in to this episode, Mr. Bob Westfall. Thank you for joining us, Bob.
Crowd goes crazy.
Yes, standing ovation every week.
There you go.
All right.
Thank you, Scott. Thank
so,
you.
You know, we could talk. I know your family is the most important. I mean, but outside of your relationship with Christ, your relationship with Kim, you got 4 children, and now since we've been together, you are a grandpa.
Yes, sir. Times 4. So I have 3 daughters and a son, and I have 3 granddaughters and a grandson.
Wow. What do your grandchildren call you? What's your nickname?
So I'm a popcorn fanatic, and my oldest granddaughter coined the phrase "pop pop" for pop pop.
I like that. We don't have any grandkids right now. We have a fantastic daughter-in-law, but I've told everyone that my grandfather's name is going to be Scott Mixmaster D, and until you can pronounce it correctly, nothing else will matter. So anyway, hey, all right. So you've been in this. My goodness, how many years have you been involved with transformational generosity?
Yep. So I started in learning about philanthropy in 1988, transitioned into the Chief Development Officer's chair at Walk Through the Bible in 1991. So from 1990 to 2020, that's all I've been focused on is helping people realize the dream of transformational generosity. So 30 years.
Wow. And so when you use that term, transformational generosity, what are we trying to convey to those who are listening and watching?
That's good. Really three ideas should come to mind. First of all, think of the people that have lived without clean water or access to the gospel, or children that have been orphaned, have nowhere to go. Think of entire communities transformed through a women's empowerment program, children getting fed lunch at school through a children's feeding program. When you think of transformational generosity, it's the impact that has on other people's lives that are recipients of the program. The second constituency is the not-for-profit that receives the gifts, the buoyancy that gives to the organization, the confidence, the courage it has when people really dive deep and give sacrificially like they've never given before. And then lastly, the giving family. You know, Scott, I've never met a family who made a transformational gift that said, boy, I regret that. You know, it's the exact opposite. It's when you make a transformational gift and you really help transform somebody else's life, what that does for you as a giver is it just brings this deep, unimaginable joy you never thought you'd have before. And often I have people say, you're just talking about the rich. No, I'm not. I'm talking about, hey, our family helped a young family last Christmas. Every Christmas, we select a family to bless that they don't know it's coming. And, you know, we bless them with a housekeeper and getting their laundry done. And they had just adopted 3 kids. And the mom had no time to do anything. So the Christmas gift was we gave them some cash to give all their kids some Christmas presents. We got a housekeeper to take care of their house for a little while, got their laundry taken care of, and we started a small college fund for all 4 kids. You know what that did for that family? But they keep saying thank you to us, and we're like, you can't imagine the joy we have in being able to do that for you.
Wow. And I got news for you. Being an evangelist, doing evangelism seminars, I know it's awkward for people to talk about their faith, but in the ministry, the most awkward thing for most of us to do is ask for someone to invest in a ministry. So, I mean, that is one of the hardest things for a ministry. And I always say we don't do what we do for money, but what we do requires money. So you're not given to a person, you're given to a ministry, but it's still awkward. And for you to be in this for 30 plus years, you've got to have that basis of calling upon your life. When was that just known for you of going, man, this is the direction I'm heading?
When I first started in philanthropy in 1991, 5 months into it, I was ready to make a career change. And the switch flipped for me when Walk Through the Bible got involved in a strategic alliance of ministries called the Co-Mission in Russia. This was early 91, mid 91, early 92. And what I saw was an opportunity unfold for the cause of Christ to be brought into the public school system of Russia. What flipped the switch for me was being able to see the impact of philanthropy in the lives of other people. And when I could see what happened when you took investment capital or resources and put them in the lives of people who were in a desperate place, and put those two things together, the transformation that occurred in both, meaning the school kids and the givers who were given the money for the school kids. When I saw what happened to those two sets of people, I was like, man, I want to be a part of this forever.
And so you're now you're CEO of Westfall Gold, which is that leading company. And for those of us in the nonprofit world, we have a great eclectic audience for this podcast, because we go to families, we go to pastors, youth pastors, students, and a lot of other nonprofits out there. And your name, if they're in the nonprofit world, they know the name Bob Westfall. Because God just kind of used you to create a special mechanism of helping nonprofits, and we've been the beneficiary of that. And there's no one out there that knows more about it than you do. How were you led to start Westfall Gold?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our model is a event model, which is a 3-night experience where we bring families together. They get embedded into the DNA of the organization, kind of away at a retreat setting. And we just pour into the lives of those givers. And when I say pour into them, I mean, we edify the body that's there. We inspire them. We encourage them. We teach them. And we kind of immerse them then into the story of the organization. But they're doing it in community, Scott. And, when you think about bringing like-minded, kindred-spirited, equally yoked families together, 40 to 50 of them, who don't know each other, but all of a sudden they're embedded together in this immersed experience over a weekend, they form community. And when they form community around a cause, they dive in deeper, they come deep, a bigger part of the fabric of the organization, and they give like they've never given before. So that's part of the whole essence of it. And for me, it's how do we help families connect with the deep engagement of generosity, not just giving money, but engaging with their talents and their personal skills and giving beyond just money. And when you do that, they become deeply vested in the cause for the organization.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and tell you, it was ministry landscape changing for us, and I'll never forget the first time, because you're inviting people to come down. Our board paid for all the expenses of getting them there, and it's not a hard ask. I want everyone to know that it's not one of those where you're just browbeating them and you can't get out of the room. There's no guarantee that anyone's going to invest. But when you share vision and they're getting involved in Bible study, it is one of those events. If you're a nonprofit leader and you haven't been a part of an event like this, Westfall Gold, I'll go ahead and just say it out loud. Go ahead and contact them, get in touch with them. and get this brought to your ministry. So, all right. So you've been doing this for, since 1990. Westfall Gold is booming. You're helping ministries. You've just hit one of those banner moments, and I wanted you to make sure you shared it. Share the success of how much you've been able to help ministries like mine that I lead. How much you've raised.
Yeah. So I'll answer your question a minute ago. In context of answering that question, you asked me how I got into this. It's actually a donor to Walk Through the Bible who had been to one of our experiences and said, man, you need to make this model available to other ministries and not-for-profit organizations. So I left Walk Through the Bible in 2002 with the dream of starting Westfall Gold. In the first 5 years, I wanted to help 5 ministries raise $15 to $20 million. So that was 2002. The goal was 5 years, 15 million, 2007. 2019, just last year, we helped inspire givers to give $171 million to the 40 clients we served last year. And in November of 2019, we crossed over $1 billion raised through this model over the last 18 years.
They're giving you another round of applause for that
one. Thank you. That's awesome.
All right. So again, that it's just one of those events, and there's other things you guys do. You help with major gifts, but what I love is getting it back down to this podcast is that you're instructing people. You're not forcing people to give. You're giving them the opportunity to be a part of what God's doing. But we have seen some changes in the landscape. What's some of the major changes you've seen since you started Westfall Gold about giving trends?
So the biggest thing that changed was the financial collapse in 2008. Our company is deeply involved in research on giving habits of high net worth and ultra high net worth families. And what happened in 2008 is the switch flipped on what inspires people of high net worth and ultra high net worth to write a check. It moved from what I call the intellectual case to the transformational case. That was over about a 2-year time period. And since 2008, that same giving motivation has actually gone up, meaning that's the number one part of the case for support that people are paying attention to, is the transformational case. So we pivoted in 2008 to bring attention to the transformational case of the clients that we serve. So that would be the single biggest factor. The second biggest factor is people are becoming more and more educated about philanthropy. And excuse me, every 2 years, there's a survey by Bank of America and the Lilly School of Philanthropy on the giving habits of high net worth and ultra high net worth families. And our company researches that, studies that report every 2 years. And that just informs us how we're going to create content for our clients for their donor weekend experience. Well, another thing that we learned is as people become more educated, they give more money. So I'll illustrate it for you. I don't have the numbers precisely right, but it's something along the lines of, if you're a beginner philanthropist, you give X amount of money. It's about $20,000 a year annually. If you're an expert philanthropist, these are people that have the same amount of net worth. So if you're a beginner, you give about $20,000 a year financially. If you're an expert, you give $140,000 a year.
Wow.
So what we've focused on not only is helping shape the case for support for our organizations that we serve, but how do we begin to build into the experience for our giving family this educational process where they become more and more comfortable, maybe even become an expert in philanthropy. And when that happens, those things, when we prove the transformational case, when we help them be educated about the mission, the vision of philanthropy, giving goes up exponentially. So over the past 10 to 12 years, that's one thing we've noticed. The second, two things that we've noticed. The third thing is there is a continued escalation of impact from people who give mid-level and major gifts, meaning People that give $1,000 or more are giving like astronomically proportionately to people that give the $0 to $1,000 a year annually.
How does this, all right, we're in the midst of a pandemic and people are that's what I love about YouTube and podcasts is you can, in 5 years, people will still be coming back to this. But right now, we're living in 2020. And you're kind of like me. Your vocation is getting as many people as possible together in the same room for the same purpose. Your method had to be changing right now. Are people having events that you're conducting, or is it just all being postponed or rescheduled?
Great question. I just got back last night from back-to-back 5-night retreats. We were supposed to do a cruise with a client, and they had a 10-night cruise planned in the Mediterranean. Instead, we did 2 5-night experiences. You could choose as an attendee either 5-night experience, and we went to Deer Valley, Utah, and we had 47 couples attend that event, and it was fantastic. Our fall event season starts September 17th. We have 7 events this fall, and we are right at actually, if there's 7 events. One of our clients has an exceptional attendance, 110 couples. So when we include that group in the 7 clients, our average attendance is actually higher this fall than it has been in the fall before.
Wow, man! Congrats on that.
Thank you.
Because I'm reading, Barna says 1/3 of our church attendance will never come back after this pandemic. How do you see the new trend of giving for churches and ministries after this pandemic is over? What will be the new normal?
Great question. For churches, I think there's an unbelievable opportunity right now that I'm not sure most people are capturing. The opportunity I see is many of the pastors I talk with are saying they're having astronomical online attendance like they've never had before. So, 2 to 3 times the number of people viewing their church service versus what they had in the pews. And in lots of cases, revenue is up for the church. Here's the big issue. The gap is, what are churches doing today to engage those online viewers and keep the relationship with them? Meaning, it's not just a Sunday morning experience. It's not, or a Saturday night. Meaning, a lot of churches are getting real creative with how they create community in the context of that service. But what I'm not seeing a lot of organizations do is develop engagement strategies for those people that log in, sign in, become part of that community. What are they doing to kind of advance, engage, pursue those relationships in a qualitative and a quantitative method that maintains engagement beyond this bubble that we're in right now? So I think that's the big opportunity. It's leadership of your church get together and start talking about, hey, we're getting all these new people coming in to our service, and we're doing some cool things online during the service, but what can we do to keep engagement with them beyond the Sunday morning or the Saturday night experience?
All right, I got to ask you something. I know we're taking up valuable time, but I had this idea go through my head. Have you thought about doing a webinar for pastors or church staff members of how to capitalize on that in the way of even transformational giving online through these virtual services?
No, you're the first to ask. This is what I do in the philanthropic space. It would make sense to think about doing something like this to help equip pastors and leadership.
All right, I see an upcoming webinar. I'm getting people writing things down. I like it when they're taking notes. All right. So my goodness, time is flying, but I do want to get to your new book, The Courage Factor. I'm just gonna go ahead and just start at the very beginning. Best place to start is the beginning. What made you come up? Your first book was just incredible, The Fulfillment Principle. What made you come back with the second book? What's the emphasis behind this book?
Yeah. So the emphasis behind this book really draws more out of when you think of leveraging your personal talents that God has given you. It seems to be that there's usually a crossroads where you have to just bust through and go after the talent. And that crux point, I call it, it takes a measure of courage and faith to break through, to then pursue your talent and your dream. And to me, that was the missing element of the fulfillment principle. It gave the background on the parable of the talents. It gave a few stories of how people leverage their talents. But the courage factor is the result of a dear friend of mine, Stephen Mansfield, who knows my story, who has heard me talk about the parable of the talents in ways he had never heard it taught before. And then he said, Bob, we need to kind of put these two together. Plus you have this milestone of raising $1 billion. Let's go out and be real transparent with your story. And let's bring the whole element of courage and faith that it took to pursue your talent. And so, Scott, it goes back to 2002 when I was about to start Westfall Gold, and that Walk Through the Bible donor challenged me to start this company. At the time, I was, I had a stay-at-home mom, 4 kids. I was on a ministry salary, didn't have 19 cents in the bank. And here's this donor saying, you have an unbelievable talent with this donor experience, and you're kind of hiding it underneath this one organization. Well, I was really safe at Walkthrough. I did a great job. I was one of the sought after executives, and I was safe. And when he challenged me to start this business, I'm like, why would I do that? I have a really great job. I'm growing in my career. And I was reminded of the parable of the talents. And I said, man, if I bury that talent, what is God going to say to me? And so I made the choice in 2002 to pursue the talent, right? It wasn't anything more than I've been given this one thing as a steward. I'm going to steward that well. And the beautiful thing about the parable of the talents to me, there's 2 things. The first one is, you remember when he said that a master was about to go on a journey and he entrusted to his servants 5 talents. Each, this is so cool to me, each according to his own ability. So when I'm talking to people about the parable of the talents, I say this, there's nobody even in the science world that would argue that there's anybody on the planet that has identical DNA to you, right? So everybody is uniquely created. And God, given how he created you, Scott, when he looked at you and he said, man, here's this person I've created, I'm going to give something of me, God, uniquely and expressly designed exclusively for Scott. That's what to me, he's saying in the parable of the talents, right? So when you get a hold of that God has uniquely created me, and considering how he created me, he gave me something of his that I get to steward. And that just is a mind-blowing concept for me. So that's the first thing. And I hope that people that read it, even folks who don't know God intimately, I hope that part just blows their mind. And then number 2, everybody I know can recite the promises God has for stewarding his talent well. We get them right from the parable of the talents. The first one is affirmation. Well done, good and faithful servant. Most Christians I know can quote that word for word, right? But the second promise is, you've been entrusted with a little. I can trust you with more. Why does God say that? Because you were a good steward of his talent. But the third promise is, to me, the second mind-blowing concept of that parable. It says, enter into the joy of your master. And for me, I like to say, folks, hey, if you want to reach an unfathomable joy, steward the talent God has given you well, and you can enter into the joy of your master. And then what I do is just kind of tell some great stories of people who've taken the talent God's given them and done some mind-blowing things with that talent. So that's the concept of the courage factor.
Well, I'll make sure I have that on August 25th, unless I get one in the mail beforehand. Anyway, now back to the book.
Yeah.
All right. So I used to always say the phrase, "There's no success without sacrifice." But when I'm looking at this, you're saying there's basically no joy without sacrifice. Now I'm gonna. You're the author of the book. I've got to go.
Yeah.
It has to start with you. You no doubt have some experiences in this. Would you mind share if you don't want to,
Yeah.
that's fine, but share one
I'm
or two
happy to.
about those
Yeah.
opportunities for you.
The moment I made the decision to leave Walkthrough, I had two opportunities. One was an extraordinary opportunity at a ministry to lead the whole thing. And the second one was at 13 years old in Cleveland, Ohio. I was watching Billy Graham on TV and accepted Billy Graham as accepted Christ as my savior through Billy Graham. Pardon me. And 13 years old. And while I was watching the crusade, it came up, I think he was in Detroit. It came up that he was going to be coming to Cleveland in a few months. And they put an 800 number on the TV. 13 years old, I call the 800 number and get 5 tickets to take my family to the Billy Graham crusade 3 months later. The tickets come in the mail. My mom's like, this is 1974. Okay. So tickets come in the mail. My mom's like, hey, who ordered these Billy Graham tickets? And I'm like, I did. Well, what's behind that is, okay, so I was offered this significant position to lead an organization 2 months after I resigned at Walkthrough. I turned it down. Again, don't bury the talent, right? So the second thing that came up, Scott, was I got a call from BGEA to come to Boone and meet with Franklin and Preston Parrish, their executive VP at the time.
Mm-hmm.
They asked me to become the chief fundraiser for the Billy Graham Center. And then they said, hey, if that works, we want you to become the chief development officer for BGEA. Here, I just had, the organization that was responsible for bringing me into the kingdom offering me the chance of a lifetime. And I turned that down. And then the other thing that happened is I was going through a horrific experience in my home. I don't want to go into that, but let's just say it was catastrophic and ended up in breakup of my family a couple of years later. In the midst of all of that was happening, that opportunity and crisis literally at the same time. The words that kept ringing through my head was, Bob, you have a talent. If you bury it and just take the easy road, you can do it. But what are you going to hear from the master at the end of the day? You took the safe road. And I can't take the safe road. I've got to go. I just have to go after it. So I go into a little bit I actually go into a lot of that story in the book. And then as I go into stories of other people that I know who've done extraordinary things with that talent and produced exceptional fruit, I bring that crossroads into the book of what some of those folks were going through and the context of then pursuing the talent God had given them.
Okay, so as we're looking at the book and talking through it, and I'm listening to you, I'm going right back to this pandemic. I mean, really, right now, people are hunkered down with a fearful attitude about what's happening. I really think you could address some of this. You probably, you didn't intentionally because no one knew we were going to walk through a pandemic, but there's got to be some principles in the book that people can rely on today going through this pandemic.
Yeah, there sure are. And number one is holding on to the truth that you've got this talent and God's asked you to steward it well. One of the things I talk about is sometimes, believe it or not, it's just one step at a time, right? It's taking a step forward, taking another step forward in faith. And that's what I was doing back then. I had 19 cents in the bank and I'm starting a company and I have an oldest daughter going to college and my family is in turmoil, right? And I'm starting a business, But what drove me was I had a stewardship to God in this one place. And I kept saying, I am not going to turn my back on that and go the safe route. I'm going to continue to pursue, continue to be bold, continue to be courageous, continue to be faithful. And yeah, was it hard? Holy cow, was it hard? At the end of the day, I never dreamed in my wildest dreams 18 years later, I'd be talking to you and saying last year we raised $1 billion.
Praise the Lord. Hey, do this. We'll put it in our show notes, but if for people wanting to get the Courage Factor, where can they get it when it's released on August 25th?
You can already pre-order it on Amazon, Christian Book, Leafwood. All the major retailers have the book available right now.
All right, and literally, if you just Google Bob Westfall and Westfall Gold, they'll be able to make sure they can get in touch with you. Again, we'll have it in our show notes. You're the one who introduced me to the lead singer of Ambrosia. That was. I have a picture of him. My wife and I in D.C. And what a night! That night you brought together, and this is for those of us over 35. You brought together. I think it was Kansas, Ambrosia, and there was one more. They were.
Was it Jim Pederek from Survivor?
It may have been, but I know they were all the three people were all followers of Christ, and I was like, wow, these are people that in the 70s and the 80s were like the people everyone wanted to listen to. And XM Radio has Yacht Radio, and so every time one of those songs come on, I go, I've met him. I met Dust in the Wind. I met that guy. Anyway, all right. Tell me this. What besides the experiencing, seeing people give and see what it does to the ministry and what it does to the giver, the donor, what is it that just makes you tick outside of family? Is it, are you a fanatic golfer? Are you a Fortnite player? I don't know. Tell me what Bob Westfall likes to do if he has a weekend off.
Yeah, believe it or not, as much as I travel, like over 3.5 million miles on Delta alone, my wife and I like to just get away, and we have found that it takes getting away from work and from everything else to just pause and settle. And so I do play golf. I enjoy boating and skiing and the pool. But when we need time, just the two of us, we get on a plane and go somewhere and park and relax. So that's what makes me tick.
Wow. Well, I'm going to tell you, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for what you've done in ministries across the globe. Carry on. Here's to 30 more. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Bob Westfall, the Westfall Gold Group. We'll have it on our show notes. Hold on. We'll be right back. This is Dawson Now.